This is Keith Lipscomb from ESPN, and if you want to maximize your potential for success, then I recommend subscribing to the Success is a Choice podcast.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we have a real special treat. We have Celia Slater as our guest. She is the co-founder and former executive director of the Alliance of Women's Coaches. She's also a longtime college basketball coach. Today, she adds value to coaches across the country through her business, True North Sports, which includes a summer camp for coaches called Camp Elevate. This is one of the best professional development events I have seen for coaches, and it's our pleasure to welcome Celia Slater to the show. Celia, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jamy. It's so nice to be with you. And first and foremost, I want to congratulate you on, the release of your book and launching this podcast. And, I think one of the things is when like-minded people connect, and both of us, I feel like, are doing a lot of the same work for a lot of the same reasons. We really want to make a difference in the lives of coaches. So congratulations to you and what you got going on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Tell our listeners a little bit about your background, your coaching background, and your work with the NCAA and the Alliance of Women's Coaches.
Well, I started out, I had played at Clemson University, and then I transferred and finished out my career at Florida State University as a basketball player. And then I went on to coach collegiate basketball for like 15 years, primarily at the Division II level. And then in 2002, 2003, in that range, I was able to make some really great connections with some people who helped me launch the NCAA Women Coaches Academy, which what was unique about this was it brought coaches together of all sports, and it was obviously because you had all these different sports in the room. You were basically talking about the people, management, leadership, self-awareness skills needed to be a great coach. And also what made it unique was it was all women. And I think the big piece of why the NCAA funded this in the first place was because it was a retention strategy, because we're losing women in the coaching profession. And I think right now we're holding steady at about 43% of all coaching jobs on the women's side are held by women. On the men's side, women still coach less than 2% of the men's teams. And so the academy was kind of a retention strategy, how to build, a supportive community, because many women are like the only woman in their department, but also just to provide them some skill sets that would empower them a bit more in the workforce when they went back. So yeah, I loved doing that work and enjoyed doing it from like 2003 to like 2014, when I decided to step out on my own and do a little, start True North Sports. And I just, like with the Women Coaches Academy, and let me back up, because we did start the Alliance of Women Coaches that I co-founded with Judy Sweet, the former senior vice president from the NCAA. And, Judy's just a remarkable pioneer in the world of women's athletics. And she really helped get the Alliance of Women Coaches and the NCAA Women Coaches Academy off the ground, really believed in the vision of it. And Judy's just, she's just been a remarkable pioneer over the years for many women's issues, Title IX. And so like in 2014 and feeling like I needed a change, and I also wanted to start including men in the work that I was doing, since they have 80% of the coaching jobs, I just really started doing True North Sports, and I'm still doing a lot of the same work where, I bring coaches of all sports together. I believe the profession of coaching is bigger than the sport you coach. And right now, I know we call coaching a profession, but technically, by definition, it's really not, because coaches don't get trained in our country. And they are not certified to coach. They just start coaching. And it's one of these amazing things to me that I just can't get my arms around, that we don't certify coaches in our country. And so, yeah, I do these different professional development programs for coaches that we bring all coaches together from all sports, and we do a lot of self-awareness, people, management, and leadership skill development. Help them develop their coaching philosophy, help them get organized and how to run their programs, and then create a supportive community for them to stay connected with, reach out for ideas. They're in the middle of a struggle. So yeah, that's pretty much where my career has been and where I am right now.
One of your main things that you do, as I mentioned in the introduction, is Camp Elevate, and this year it's going to be in Colorado. I thought it was a great event last year. When you talk about coaches don't receive formal training, that informal training, it's not a certified event like other countries have, but definitely the training you provided goes a long way to developing coaches and helping them then impact their student athletes. Talk a little bit about Camp Elevate and what you have in store for it this year.
Well, Camp Elevate is kind of like a summer camp for coaches, and what we do is we bring in the coaches, and this year we're going to model Camp Elevate after my friend Jonathan Field's book called How to Live a Good Life. And in his book, he talks about the 3 buckets that we want to constantly be working to keep full in our lives. And the 3 buckets are vitality, contribution, and connection. And so we're going to kind of model our camp or frame our camp around those 3 buckets this year. So in the morning, we're going to be doing vitality, which is going to be maybe a couple talks on different vitality topics from meditation, self-renewal, creating a positive daily ritual for yourself. And then we're going to go on a hike or a walk somewhere in the Pikes Peak region. Colorado Springs is beautiful. Lots of great hiking trails. And so we're going to go and take the coaches on a hike, and those hikes are going to be kind of structured in a way because my friend who's a retired 2-star general from the Air Force, Barbara Falkenberry, she's going to be leading those hikes for me, and we're going to build in some leadership development conversations. So these coaches are going to be walking and talking with a partner. And so it's going to be really awesome. Get them outside, get that vitality bucket filled. And then in the afternoon is the contribution bucket. And the contribution bucket for us, for this particular camp, is going to be all focused around their life as a coach. And how can we give them personal and professional development that'll help them build that contribution bucket or fill that contribution bucket. And this year, our theme for the contribution bucket is how to recruit, connect, and coach this generation of athletes. So all the workshops in the afternoon are going to be geared towards ideas, listening to experts in those areas. And then the evening is going to be the connection bucket. And in the connection bucket, we're going to do some networking, and we're also going to have a lecture series where we're going to bring in some keynote speakers that we're also going to open the lecture series to the general public in the Colorado Springs area. And right now I'm in the process of recruiting those keynote speakers for the lecture series. So I don't really have anybody in ink yet, but I'm still working on that. But it's going to be fantastic. And we are in talks of partnering with the Olympic Training Center, and they would like to host one night of the lecture series. And so we're trying to, make it really cool and part of the Colorado Springs community, as well as a great event for the coaches attending Camp Elevate. The dates are going to be May 31st through June 3rd, and I'm getting ready to start registration. November, I'm just going to have it open up for the alumni who came to camp last year and offer them their nice alumni rate. And then December, we'll start our early bird registration through probably March.
Camp Elevate is not the only thing that you do to help build up coaches and help train them. Talk a little bit about some of your coaching programs and your services that you offer through True North.
Well, right now we're in the middle of our online class that we do called Coach on the Rise Academy. And basically, Coach on the Rise Academy is a year-long program virtually that we do where we help a coach build their program brick by brick. So basically, we help them develop their coaching philosophy. Like last night, our collaboration huddle was all about organizing your program and increasing your productivity. And so we have these once a month collaboration huddles, and then we also provide deep dive activities for the coaches. So they want to go deeper in that topic. We provide things that they can go deeper in. And so that's one really, and I've really enjoyed that class. The people who have been invested in it, I think, are getting a lot out of it. And because I really don't think there's much out there that helps a coach understand how to build their program brick by brick, and how much that program is a reflection of who they are, their life story, their purpose, their highest values, and how to set those standards according to that of who they are as a person and their strengths. So I think that's another program that we're doing right now, and we'll probably start another one of those classes right after Camp Elevate again next year. And the subscription for that is probably going to be $30 a month next year for a coach who would like to be a part of that program, which is nothing. It's one of the greatest bargains out there right now. And then the other thing that I'm doing right now that I'm really, really enjoying is I've been doing a mastermind group with 8 female head coaches across the country from a variety of sports, and we touch base once a month, and I facilitate this group, and they just basically talk about things they're struggling with and things that come up for them and challenges, and they offer each other feedback and ideas for solutions, and sometimes coaches just need to vent and get something off their chest. They don't even want feedback. And I think sometimes this is one of the things I've found over the years is that coaches really need just a place to talk and process things that come up in a safe environment. And so this mastermind thing kind of came to me through my involvement in Jonathan Field's Good Life Project community. I was exposed to the mastermind process through his community, and I thought, my God, this would be so great for coaches, to get together and talk. And not only do we do that, we hold each other accountable. So we check back in every month and we say, okay, did you do what you said you were going to do from the last call? So they know that, they're being held accountable as well. But I'm loving that process, and I'm probably going to expand the mastermind process. And I love it because it's coaches of all sports again. And I'm back in touch with my roots of really working with female coaches. And I really, really am enjoying it a lot. And I think the coaches are getting a lot out of it as well. And then I'm doing some one-on-one coaching, which I've really resisted over the years. And now I'm like kicking myself going, why have I not done this sooner? Because I really have loved it. And I probably will take on a few more coaches, and that. So I basically, those are primarily the main things that we are working on right now at True North Sports. So it's keeping me busy, and looking at partnering with some people to potentially create coaching college within their university. So that's pretty exciting for me, but that's really at the beginning stages. So hopefully I'll have a lot more to report on that 6 months from now. But I'm definitely in the talks with some people, which that totally excites me, is creating a coaching college.
We'll return to Celia in just a moment. It's great hearing about all the events and services that she has available to coaches in order to help them better impact the lives of student athletes. In the same way, we are also trying to make a positive difference with our new book, The Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. It's packed full of practical insights and stories to help your student athletes understand how they can be a better leader. When we help develop today's students, we can also help influence the future. Please visit theleadershipplaybook.com to learn more about this impactful book. And now back to more insights from Celia Slater. You were a longtime coach, and you've dealt with coaches your whole career, and now you're training up and working with coaches on a pretty close basis and helping them be better. What are some things that you see coaches do that kind of screw things up, or mistakes that coaches make that you're trying to correct?
Well, I think a lot of their mistakes, quite frankly, are not always their fault, because I think coaches come into this profession not really understanding what they're stepping into. And I can tell you that majority of coaches that we work with, they don't know what they don't know. And it's like if I asked a coach to create a curriculum for True North Sports and we create a curriculum for the coaches, I can tell you it would be vastly different what they would think is important. But once they experience our curriculum, they're going, oh my God, I wish I would have known those things sooner. But I think a lot of it is how people get into the coaching profession is just like there's 100 different ways that people get into coaching. And we do not have these standards for coaches. And I don't mean just standards of education and knowledge. They don't have ethical standards. We don't have, things that we hold people to a higher standard, and we do not have a training and development environment, which, you and I, that could be the next topic we talk about. But I really feel like where coaches mess up, and again, it's kind of an unconscious thing because they don't really recognize it, is that they really have a lack of self-awareness, and they're not spending time reflecting. They've never been taught how to organize their values, what's important to them, how to create a culture, how to organize their program. And, the best way I can say it is they wing it, and they hide behind the 20-ton shield of X's and O's. Well, if I just know more strategy, or if I go listen to the coach who wins the most, or if I just go watch Gino practice, and the reality is Gino's successful because Gino's Gino. And, it's kind of like, really the point is, and the name of my company, True North Sports, is kind of after Bill George's work of authentic leadership. And really my whole thing is getting the coaches to really get in touch with who they are as a person. What's their inner compass? And are they following that compass? Or are they just coaching like they were coached? And so really getting them to coach from that authentic place and follow their true north. That's what I see a lot of people mess up. And also they get caught up in the win-loss thing. And so, but I would say if there's anything that we could do to help coaches would be to increase their self-awareness and where are their strengths? Where do they need to grow? Coaching from their strengths. And then finding people to hire that help support where they're not so strong. So to me, I would say that's what I see over and over. I can tell you this, Jamie, like all the years that I did the Women Coaches Academy, at the beginning of the academy, I would do this session called Philosophy Soup. And I would just talk about what are the ingredients to your recipe of your coaching philosophy? Where did it come from? Is it working for you? And at the beginning of that class, I would always ask, how many of you have your philosophy written down? Like you just kind of know what you believe in. You know what you stand for. And I guarantee you, less than 7 coaches in that classroom would raise their hand out of 40 to 45 coaches. And it's like, it's just amazing to me. And that's a very good example of the lack of self-awareness in the coaching profession right now.
What can administrators do to help in that? What would be your advice for administrators?
And I don't know, like, if you find this to be true when you're working with coaches, but I don't feel like we really lack an environment of training and development. Like, I don't understand it, because advice to administrators, to me, would be invest in your coaches. If you really believe that the student-athlete experience is your highest priority, and student-athlete health and welfare is your highest priority, then start putting your money into the people who have the greatest impact on that experience, on that health, on that welfare. And right now, the way administrators and way it's set up is that the way they invest in their coaches training and development, and this isn't true everywhere. Some schools are putting more into coaching training and development than others, but I would still say that they are the minority. But the farthest that a lot of them go is they just put money in their budget to go to their coaches association convention. And usually that's only for the head coach. Like the head coach has to be generous and share that money at most schools, all right? Now, maybe not the big schools, but at most schools, that head coach then has to turn around and figure out a way to help their young assistant go, who's making, what, $5,000 a year or $20,000 a year. And so I think this is a really bad miss on our part to think that going to your coaches associate, and I'm not blaming, I really love the coaches associations. I do. I'm not sure and I'm not convinced that it's where we need to go in coaching, training, and development to get to the kind of training and development and certification that I'm talking about. And I think that we have to have more. I think the coaches associations are great. The conventions are great. But as a profession, take the sport out of it. As a profession, we need more. And I don't understand why it's not more of a priority for coaches. I was just at a conference meeting. And I was speaking to some SWAs in the room, which if you're not familiar with what a SWA is, that would be the Senior Woman Administrator. And so all these women were in the room, and I was talking to them. I said, most schools invest a lot of money into or they have a budget for student-athlete development, student-athlete welfare. And what I suggested to them was take a percentage of that money and start dedicating it to coach development. And I think that's the part. So, and here's the piece of this. When I say training and development, first of all, we're not training them. Okay, so we have to figure out a way to train our coaches. Then there's the whole other piece about how do we develop our coaches. So here's another big missing loop at most colleges is that where's the coach getting credible feedback to get him to get better? Like, how are coaches getting better? And what is the system in place to support them, train them, and develop them? Because what I see right now, quite frankly, I see coaches getting their feedback that they get is through their win-loss record, student-athlete exit interviews, or they get a university-wide evaluation form that's used for every employee at the university, or they get an evaluation from their athletics director that really doesn't go into what I would consider, what we go by are 7 competencies, 7 areas of competencies that coaches need to be competent. And, so I think that's a really big miss and right now, like, I feel like athletic departments really need a training and development department. There needs to be maybe a coach's coach within the athletics department, a former coach that they really trust who can be mentoring and guiding the coaches within their department. So I feel like there's this chasm between administration sometimes and coaches. And it's not that the administrators don't care. It's just they don't have time. They're really busy. And coaches are just as guilty. They don't work hard to build the relationships with the administrators. And again, this isn't true for everyone. I get that. But I would say that the people that are building those relationships, that are training and developing their coaches, are still way, way, way far in the minority. And everybody will tell you, the money's getting cut. They don't have the money. They're struggling financially. And so the burden for coaches to get better falls on them a lot, to take it out of their money, to take it out of their paycheck. And so the people who suffer the most are the young coaches who don't have that money. They're making $20,000 a year at most schools. We're not talking, University of Florida or Florida State or, Duke. That's not the truth. That's not the real world for the majority of our coaches.
You were right on. If you're not developing your coaches, training your coaches, and then developing them, then how do you expect them to be able to then turn around and train and develop the student athletes to be the best student athletes, but also to be the best members of society and out in the community.
Yeah. And I think, Jamie, if you think back about coaching, and if you go back to like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even into the 80s, and then after the 80s, when everybody quit, everybody started cutting physical education programs. Like in the past, many of those people were physical education majors that were going into coaching. And so they did have some basic training. They were taught how to teach. They learned about anatomy and physiology. They learned about, development, motor skill development, or how to teach a skill, or how to even organize a curriculum. Like, that's kind of very similar to organizing a program, organizing your whole season, and we haven't caught up to the fact that we've got people coming in with law degrees, marketing degrees, and that's all great, but are they really ready to become a coach? And this is the thing. It's not just about holding coaches accountable and to higher standards. I'm going to say that on an unconscious level, because this is a whole new paradigm to say train, certify our coaches. The coaches are the ones that are going to push back the hardest on this. But here's the thing. This is what I believe. There's this background hum that's in the lives of coaching that is called stress. And that stress comes from their lack of training in so many different areas that if they just had some basic training, that hum would be a lot lower. And they would feel like they would going into this profession with the toolkit. So I look at what I'm saying is I'm a coach's advocate. I'm not sure where the advocates are. And I think, for me, I feel like coaches don't trust. There's a lack of trust in the profession. And that's because there's not enough supportive relationships. Coaches feel like they don't win, they're going to get fired. And I just don't think that's a good model, because you know who that pressure trickles down to? The athletes. The athletes that the coach feels expendable, then the athletes become expendable. So, hey, if I'm not winning, I got to get rid of this kid. I don't care if I recruited him or her. If they don't produce for me, sorry, you're out of here. And I don't think that's a very good model for higher education or athletics. And, that's just my take on it. I think you can tell I'm a little passionate about it.
No, no, I think you're spot on, Celia. Mm-hmm. And it's not just training, it's development, but even at the training level, most coaches, when you go into a new program, you receive very little, if any, training for that school, for what's expected of you, other than just a real quick, hey, well, this is what we expected of you on the interview. And then once they're in it, it's, well, you're on your own. You didn't get to this point without being self-motivated. You'll figure it out, or you'll be in charge of your program, or like you said, here's the money to go to a professional development. When you go to work in almost any other profession, they give you extensive training, and they understand the value of ongoing training so that they have the best employees possible. And it's amazing how in a profession that's so important to the impact of our society later on with developing people and our future leaders, that we don't have more training, like you said.
Yeah, no, I really don't understand it. But, for me, what I really love to do, and I love to work with coaches in a much more like kind of an intimate way where I really can get to know them and get to know their story and do whatever I can to support them to become the best coach that they possibly can be. Because let me just say, I believe in this profession. I think it's one of the most, like you're saying, it's one of, like you look at the people who have the highest impact on our youth in our country. And some statistic, like 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 kids play sports at some level in our country right now. And yet we don't, all the coaches are not trained. I mean, you go to any level from youth all the way up to the professional level. Like, how do these people get their training? And so I do think, like, I know how important it is. I also know how challenging of a profession is, as you do too, in your coaching career. And it's really hard. It's hard to to manage and lead young people, and really not have the skill set or at least the background knowledge of just a baseline knowledge. Like I've been reading a lot about emotional intelligence lately. Jonathan Fields, my friend from the Good Life Project, he had Daniel Goleman on his podcast recently, and it was just so fascinating for me to listen to. So I went and I bought all these little booklets that Daniel Goleman had produced. They're the 12 emotional intelligence competencies. And I'm thinking, if a coach just took one class, and they got certified in emotional intelligence, it would change their lives as a coach. I mean, it's unbelievable, just from your personal self-awareness, emotional control, self-regulation, your organizational relationships, your personal, I mean, it's just crazy good stuff that every coach should know. And we're going to do that at Camp Elevate. We're having a workshop on emotional intelligence because I just can't, I feel guilty if I don't teach it to them at this point. So, those are just some, examples of, I really want to help them be successful. And because I just know how hard it is. And I made so many mistakes. Like I made every mistake in the book. But it's because I didn't know what I was doing. And here's the other thing that I find. Coaches, they have a hard time knowing where, and they don't really feel safe asking for help when they're struggling. And I can tell you, especially a lot of our young coaches. And so how do people build that trust? They build that trust in a community of people that they feel safe sharing and, calling me up and saying, hey, I'm struggling. I really need to talk. And hey, I had 5 kids get caught drinking last night, and I want to kick them all off the team. And, and talking that coach off the limb, like, talking them off the cliff, like, hey, let's talk through that, But those are the situations, as that come up. Like even now, coaches with athletes with mental illness, with, what do I do? How do I handle this? And those are the things that coaches struggle with. And I'm on coaches are not getting fired because they don't know their X's and O's of their sport. Yes, you'll say they're getting fired because they're not winning. But why aren't they winning? They're not winning because their culture is toxic. They're not a good communicator. They can't handle conflict. Their program is disorganized. So I think we have to really look at where our coach is suffering, get coaches to admit that's where they're suffering, and hopefully get the attention of the higher ups that we need to put more money into this.
When you were a coach, who were some of the people that kind of shaped you and helped mentor you, or were thought leaders in your coaching thoughts?
Oh, Jamy, that's such a great question. And I think, the concept of turning your wound into a gift, that's my life's work, because I can tell you one of my biggest woundedness was that I did not feel like I had a lot of great mentors. I felt like I was on my own. I was ashamed of asking for help. Like, I should know what I'm doing. And then there were some behaviors that I was doing. Like, this is why the emotional intelligence stuff is so fascinating for me. And I wish I would have known it as a young coach, because I was out of control. Like, I was all over the place emotionally. And just the self-regulation aspect of emotional intelligence would have helped me so much as a young coach. And having a mentor who could say to me and help me, along, I think that would have been very, very helpful. But, back then in the day, like for me, I really loved John Wooden, which is really interesting because he was, probably had a ton of emotional control. But I went to his camp when I was a kid, and out in California, out in Thousand Oaks, California. And I just really, really loved him. I loved his energy. I loved that he read poetry to us every morning at camp. He taught us how to tie our shoes and put our socks on. And then when my dad wrote a message to John Wooden saying, hey, I'm afraid that they're just using your name to get kids to the camp. Are you even going to be at the camp? And he wrote a handwritten note back to my parents, saying how much he was going to be there and how much he loves being at camp, teaching the game. So I think he was a big influence. And of course, all the other people that back in that day, from, Pat Summit to Gino, to all those different people who, we were all looking up to as young coaches. So I would say that those were the biggest influences on me. But unfortunately, like I said, I really made a lot of mistakes. And some of those mistakes, I did a lot of really great things. So I wasn't, I did a lot of really good things. But there were some things that continually tripped me up as a young coach, and did not help my decision-making process. I think that's, and especially at smaller schools like where I was, I was at the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, and, I didn't have a budget for an assistant coach, so I had some volunteers. So, I was doing a lot of things. Like I was in charge of everything, which I know a lot of coaches are. The majority of coaches have a lot of responsibility. And how do you manage all that? Who's teaching us that? And because it's a lot. When you move from that assistant coach seat to the head coach seat, the number one thing those coaches are going to feel is that overwhelming sense of responsibility. And how can we help them manage that? The assistant coaches are a whole nother group that we need to really think about. How are we training the next generation of coaches? Because right now it's not a true apprenticeship. They're not coming in and learning how to be a head coach if that's what they want to be. It's kind of like they're just doing their job.
And as you said, a lot of times if there is money in the budget, it's for the head coach only to go to professional development. And so the assistants aren't being developed like they should. And in some respects, the assistant coaches have as much or more of an impact on some of these players because they are the liaison from the player to the coach sometimes.
That's such a great point. So true.
Well, Celia, I really appreciate your insights. I think they were spot on. And hopefully if there's administrators out there listening to this, they maybe think they look at how they're doing things to train and develop their coaches. And maybe they take a different perspective on that they hadn't thought of before. So I think your thoughts are spot on. And thanks for taking the time to join us today.
It's my pleasure. I really have enjoyed being here.
That was a good, honest, and thought-provoking conversation today with Celia. And if you are a college coach or administrator listening to this today and are not motivated to be better after hearing Celia's thoughts, then you might want to re-examine your priorities. How can we best add value and develop student athletes? That is what the question and emphasis should be each and every day. Thank you for listening, and please take just a moment to hit that little subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. And remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?